Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the national anthem.
Stand by, color, attend, color, shoulder,
Advance the colors.
color, ready, cut, color, forward, colors, hope, colors, present,
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
color, forward,
Retire the colors.
ready, step,
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending today's ceremony. It is my pleasure to introduce the 75th Secretary of the Navy, Ray Mabus.
Thank you all so much for being here today for these announcements. Particular thanks to Justice Sonia Sotomayor, to Senator Richard Blumenthal, Senator Chris Murphy, Mayor Muriel Bowser. We have two sponsors who were unable to attend today, Ilana Kagan, also a Justice of the Supreme Court, and Eleanor Holmes Norton, the representative of the District of Columbia in Congress. I'll have more to say about the sponsors in a minute, but we are very fortunate to have our two senators here today from Connecticut. Senator Blumenthal, who has a son on active duty in the Navy today and who is forward deployed today. Chris Murphy, they represent the state that houses Electric Boat, which will build most of these submarines that I'm going to announce, the first of a class today. And they represent Connecticut very, very well. And Electric Boat builds, along with Huntington Ingalls, the best submarines in the world. So thank you all. Thank you both for being here. And I have to say something personally. I mean, you read the bios of these folks, and every one of them are, with the exception of the mayor and me, distinguished legal scholars. I'm a recovering lawyer, and I haven't practiced in almost 4 decades, but I have to say I'm in way over my head with people who have worked in the law and been as distinguished in it as the people here today. So our Navy and Marine Corps uniquely provide presence around the world, around the clock. It ensures stability, deters adversaries, reassures allies, and provides our nation's leaders with options in times of crisis. We're America's away team. Sailors and Marines never get permanent homecomings because equally in times of peace and in times of war, we deploy. We're not in the right place just at the right time. We're in the right place all the time. There is no next best thing to being there. But to get that presence, you've got to have gray hulls on the horizon. You've got to have gray hulls under the sea. So we've reversed the decline in shipbuilding. In 2001, the U.S. Navy had 316 ships. 7 years later, after one of the great military buildups in American history, we were down to 278 ships. In those 7 years, the Navy put 41 ships under contract. 41 ships was not enough to keep our fleet from continuing to decline, and it wasn't enough to keep our great shipyards in business either. I have been there 7 years, since 2009, and in those 7 years, we've contracted for 86 ships. And we've done so with a 20% overall smaller top line, and we bought 35% more aircraft at the same time, too. The reason we were able to do this, one of the prime reasons, is the support of Congress, the support of our elected representatives, and with this support, even if we don't build another ship, we're going to reach 300 ships by 2019, and we'll reach our assessed need of today of 308 ships by 2021. Now, as Secretary, one of the great privileges I have, but also one of the great responsibilities, is naming each Navy ship. Each class of ship has a naming convention, a theme. Submarines have been named after mainly states. Littoral combat ships after smaller cities. Destroyers for naval heroes and members of Congress and previous secretaries of the Navy. Aircraft carriers, mainly for presidents. Amphibious ships after marine battles. We do this to honor our history, but we also do it to better connect the American people with their Navy and their Marine Corps. Honoring naval heroes, sailors and Marines who have sacrificed so much for this country, is an important part of venerating American values. I've named 8 ships after Medal of Honor recipients, and 2 ships after Navy Cross recipients, including Rafael Peralta, a Marine who died in service in Iraq, and Lena Sukvik Higbee, the first woman awarded the Navy Cross in World War I. But it's also important to recognize and honor those who have strived to fulfill the promise laid out in our Constitution to form a more perfect union. Those who fought in a different way for the ideals we cherish as a nation: justice, equality, freedom. That's why last January I named the first ship of a new class the John Lewis, after the icon who dedicated and risked his life for that justice, equality, and freedom. The theme for this new class of ship is to honor those who fought for civil and human rights. The names of the first 6 have been chosen. First is John Lewis. The second is Harvey Milk, first openly gay person to hold public office in California and an advocate for the LGBT community. The fourth for Robert Kennedy, who dedicated particularly the end of his life to advancing human rights. And I've also named the Lucy Stone and the Sojourner Truth, after extraordinary women who just didn't press for women's rights, but for human rights. Today, one of the ships I'm naming is to honor Chief Justice of the Supreme Court Earl Warren for his contributions in civil rights. Earl Warren was a politician, governor of California, Republican vice presidential nominee in 1948. He was popular, though, on both sides of the aisle. But his true legacy was his leadership of the Supreme Court that gave us so many of the decisions that have shaped our civil rights for over half a century. Under his leadership, a unanimous Supreme Court struck down the old separate but equal rulings that segregated Americans and overturned that in Brown versus Board of Education. Today, we know that gender and racial integration, along with diversity of thought and experience, is a strength not only of the Navy and the Marines, but of this nation. That strength is seen across this nation as we strive for that more perfect union. As I mentioned earlier, naming these ships is a way to connect the Navy and the Marines to America, to the American people. And we need to be representative not only of the American public, but where they're from. Each city, county, state, territory has its own identity. And as such, it's fitting that we name the next remarkable ship after one of the most remarkable territories. Expeditionary fast transport ships are critical to the Navy in providing time-sensitive movement of both cargo and people. They go very fast. They go, because of their shallow draft, into places no other ship can go. They are extraordinarily versatile and extraordinarily important. And today we honor the people of Puerto Rico by naming our newest expeditionary fast transport after the Commonwealth that has, since World War I, sent so many of its sons and daughters to serve as sailors and Marines. And we have one more place, one more group of people to honor, and that's the people of the District of Columbia. The district is not just home to our federal government, but also it's a personification of the United States, an icon for freedom and peace and valor. 1791, President Washington announced the selection of an area on both sides of the Potomac River from Georgetown to the Anacostia River, a square of land officially named the District of Columbia in 1796. In 1799, 74 secretaries of the Navy ago, the first secretary, Benjamin Stoddard, authorized the establishment of the Washington Navy Yard along the Anacostia River. Today we expand that connection between the district and our Navy by naming the world's newest and most advanced nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarine. Our roots in the District of Columbia are deep. The Washington Navy Yard is the oldest installation in the United States and is known as the quarterdeck of the Navy. During its early years, 22 ships were constructed in the Washington Navy Yard, making it the largest shipbuilding and shipfitting facility in our country. I think you could say that the District of Columbia loved building ships then as much as I do now. As home to the Navy Yard, the District of Columbia has armed the fleet and it's fostered scientific innovation. Robert Fulton researched and tested his clockwork torpedo here. The first shipboard catapult for launching aircraft was tested on the Anacostia, and gears for the Panama Canal locks were forged here. The last place Abraham Lincoln visited on the last day of his life was the Washington Navy Yard. And that yard manufactured everything from small components for optical systems to enormous 6-inch guns for battleships. The Navy Yard manufactured the arms for the Great White Fleet, which circumnavigated the globe in the first instance of the importance of global presence, putting President Theodore Roosevelt's theory into practice that, in his words, a good Navy is not a provocation to war, it is the surest guarantor of peace. The production of ships like the one we're naming today are an example of how we're carrying the District of Columbia's legacy forward. in the same spirit as the Navy Yard's history of innovation. Our newest class of these ballistic missile submarines will have the latest technologies, allowing us to carry that mission of global presence forward well into the future. But before my announcement of these names officially, I want to talk about one more Navy tradition, and that's the tradition of being a sponsor. Sponsors are one of our nation's most important and most enduring traditions, going back literally hundreds of years. A sponsor imbues her ship with her spirit and her personality. She stays in communication with that ship throughout its entire life in the fleet. Every time a new captain reports aboard, one of their first duties is to call the sponsor. Each one of the ships we have here today has a very fitting sponsor. The USNS Earl Warren will be sponsored by Justice Alana Kagan. USNS Puerto Rico by Justice Sonia Sotomayor. And USS Columbia by the District of Columbia's representative in Congress, Eleanor Holmes Norton. Each of these extraordinary people have dedicated much of their lives to public service to aid in striving for that more perfect union. Although she was unable to attend today, Justice Kagan carries on Chief Justice Earl Warren's legacy as a consensus builder. Her dedication and her tenacity is representative of Earl Warren's life of service. Born in the Bronx, Justice Sotomayor was born to Puerto Rican parents, giving her a deep connection to that island. At Princeton, Justice Sotomayor was a champion for diversity, especially in calling for the hiring of Puerto Rican and Hispanic administrators and faculty. When she petitioned and then fought for change, it wasn't just the right thing to do, it made Princeton a stronger institution. Likewise, diversity today makes our Navy stronger. Justice Sotomayor, through her entire career as a practicing attorney on every level of the federal court system, has embodied the strength and the diversity that Puerto Rico brings to our nation. And finally, also unable to attend because of her duties in the House, a third-generation Washingtonian, no better person to sponsor a ship named for the District of Columbia than Congresswoman Holmes Norton. From the days of the Civil Rights Movement, hers has been a loud and a clear voice for freedom and for equality. She has been tireless in her service to constituents, improving their lives by fighting for jobs in the district, spurring economic development, and making sure their voice was heard in Congress. This fierce advocate and her steadfast spirit will be carried in the ship she sponsors. And we are happy today to have the mayor representing the District of Columbia here. We in the Navy are very fortunate to have these three people agree to serve as sponsors and to have them in the service not only of the Navy, but of the nation. The strength of America, the strength of the American people is well represented by these new ships and by their sponsors. So, it is my privilege to officially name TAO 207, the USNS Earl Warren. EFP 11, USNS Puerto Rico. And and SSBN 826, USS Columbia. And in the traditional way of the Navy, may God bless these ships and all those who sail in them. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce Justice Sonia Sotomayor.
Welcome, everyone. I am Sonia Sotomayor, an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court. It is my privilege and honor to serve as a sponsor of the USNS Puerto Rico. I understand that one of the key purposes of this vessel and its admirable crew is to support the naval fleet. That is a worthy endeavor. I myself am not a member of the armed forces, but my mother was a member of the Women's Army Corps during World War II, stationed in New York. She, like many others before her, joined the military to serve her country. In exchange, she received from the military as a gift of hope for her own future. You see, my mother was serving her new home. My mother was originally from Puerto Rico and joined the U.S. military not only to serve, but also to gain the tools she needed to thrive in her new world. I know that my mother's story is not so unusual. The military has opened the same doors of opportunity for innumerable others over the course of many generations for people from all walks of life. In particular, I know that Puerto Ricans have served with honor in all branches and its supporting entities. Secretary Mabus, on behalf of an island I adore, thank you for your kind words about the courage of so many Puerto Ricans who have served this country with honor. In this respect, the Society of Sponsors also has a long and admirable history, with activities including scholarship programs and charitable contributions in support of students, wounded veterans, and their families. I am not a member of the military, but the institution that I do serve, the Supreme Court of the United States, does have some things in common with the military. Although our tool of choice is the pen, we also aim to defend the rights of American citizens and protect the liberties of every person in this country. We, like everyone here today, aim to safeguard the fundamental principles on which our society was built. Ships like the one we celebrate today serve this country in very practical ways, but they also represent something more. They are a symbol of our country, and they represent the spirit of the crew, military and civilian alike, who commit themselves to such worthy goals as honor, respect, liberty, and defense of country. I very much look forward to the role I will serve as sponsor of this ship. I am deeply grateful to Secretary Mabus for selecting me to be the sponsor of this newly minted ship and of the beautiful name it carries. Thank you, sir, for the honor you pay me.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce Senator Richard Blumenthal.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Secretary. Thank you for honoring us by inviting us here today. I've argued a number of cases before the United States Supreme Court, which, frankly, I found to be the most intimidating experience of my entire life. But I'd rather be before the Supreme Court than be on the wrong side of that ship. Thank you, Madam Justice, for being here today. How would you like to be the first captain of that ship and be told, well, your first duty is to call up Justice Sotomayor. But really, I can tell you she is extremely friendly and engaging, so you should pass that on to the first captain. Mr. Secretary, I want to extend to you a personal thanks on my behalf, and I think on behalf of the entire Navy, without being too presumptuous, on behalf of the entire country. You have presided over the largest shipbuilding, most successful Navy effort in the history of the United States in your close to 8 years in this position. And I know from our experience at Electric Boat how extraordinary your stewardship has been in this shipbuilding program. You have done an enormous service for this country, and I want to thank you for the great work you've done as our Secretary of the Navy over the last 8 years. Thank you. Groton and Connecticut are the submarine capital of the world, in case you didn't know. The submarine capital of the world is represented by Chris Murphy and myself and our great friend and colleague Joe Courtney in the House of Representatives, and I'm proud to be here in the democratic capital of the world, representing the submarine capital of the world in this really historic occasion, which is a new class of submarine, replacing the Ohio class, which is an essential element of our nuclear triad, protecting our nation against nuclear attack, deterring nuclear attack. I serve on the Armed Services Committee as well as the Veterans Affairs Committee. And this ship is truly essential to our national security. It is the most secure means of deterring nuclear attack. The Ohio replacement, the Ohio class submarine was designed to last 30 years. It will last, in fact, close to 42 years. And this submarine will be designed to last 42 years as well. And it will be deterring and defending our nation well into the latter part of this century. Many of us may be gone by then. But what we do today and what we are building today is an American military and the capability of defense and deterrence that is essential to freedom and democracy in this nation well into our grandchildren's and great-grandchildren's generation. That is why I am so proud to be here today and to salute the United States Navy and our Marines. I do have a son who is in the Navy now. Another of my sons was deployed as a Marine. I want to give him a shout out as well. But also the enormously dedicated and talented workforce at Electric Boat. The men and women who go to work every day and build our submarines at Electric Boat in Connecticut or at any of the shipbuilding sites around this nation, whatever the class of ship, are as vital to our national defense as the men and women in uniform. And I am very, very proud to represent them every day that I come to work, and very, very proud to serve in the United States Senate and have a small part, in securing the capability that the men and women in uniform here today and every day secure our nation to do so well. Thank you for your service to our nation. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce Senator Chris Murphy.
Well, thank you very much for having Senator Blumenthal and I here, to Justice Sotomayor, to Mayor Bowser, thank you for being such an integral part of today's historic moment. And to Secretary Mabus, I know that these last 8 years have been historic, but they are just one chapter in your storied career, and we will celebrate the achievements maybe capped off here today by these announcements of your 8 years. Senator Blumenthal and I are in town today for this event, but we are also in town to attend tonight a vigil, which marks 4 years since a tragedy in our state that still sends ripples and reverberations out across the world. And I make that connection to today because it underscores what our foundational sacred responsibility is as public servants. It's to keep people safe. It's to keep children and adults free from harm. And the sailors and the Marines that will be aboard these ships that will inhabit this new class of submarines have put their lives on the line, have decided to spend every waking hour of their working lives to pay honor to that sacred responsibility of public servants, to keep Americans and, in fact, to keep peoples of all nationalities around the world safe. And so I make that connection because there is one between the work that these submarines will do and the work that we are all challenged to do in the wake of tragedies like the one that we saw in Connecticut. I've spent a lot of time down in the shipyards in southeastern Connecticut. I got to spend one whole day recently shadowing the men and the women who work on these submarines. And that responsibility, keeping America safe, right, it lives inside every single one of those workers. Those shipyards have generations of families that have gone back, welding these submarines together, wiring these modern submarines together. And there is a pride of making in that place that Secretary Mabus knows well, and anybody who gets the chance to go there can see for themselves. We celebrated 100 years this year of making submarines in Connecticut. But it actually goes back farther than that. On the bottom of the Hudson River lies a submarine called the Turtle, which was the first ever invented in this world by a young entrepreneur in Old Saybrook in Essex, Connecticut. So we've made them for 100 years, but we invented them there as well. And that pride of making, that pride of ownership, that pride of craftsmanship, that pride in helping to contribute to the safety of Americans, well, Connecticut and those that work in that shipyard wear it on their sleeves. And so I'm just so honored to be able to be here, to be part of my first naming ceremony, to celebrate Connecticut's contribution in making about 80% of each one of the Columbia-class submarines that will come off the yard, and to be here on a day today in a myriad of ways recommit ourselves to that foundational basic responsibility of public service to keep all of our neighbors safe from harm. Congratulations, Secretary Mabus. Thank you for having me here today.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce Mayor Muriel Bowser.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I am very delighted to welcome all of you to City Hall. And we are so honored, Mr. Secretary, when you called and to give us the news that we would have this submarine named in honor of the people of the District of Columbia. But also very honored when you said that you were going to bring all three branches of the federal government to a local Washington. So to you, Justice, we are always happy to be in your company and so appreciate your service. And Secretary, to the senators, I also want to thank you for your service to our nation. And you heard the Secretary mention earlier that submarines have been traditionally named for states. And we're happy that this one is being named for the District of Columbia. It is indeed our honor that this, the first of its kind ship will be named for the residents of the District of Columbia. As we have heard throughout the history of our city, county, state, that the Navy has been very much a part of our evolution. Just this month, we all joined in solidarity to remember the sacrifices of so many of our veterans of the District of Columbia and our entire nation who made the ultimate sacrifice in recognizing the 75th anniversary of the attack on Pearl Harbor. And I join with all of not only our residents, but with my friends on the Council of the District of Columbia who are also here, and I would like to acknowledge them. Councilmember Todd, who is here, and Councilmember Allen from Ward 6, where the Navy Yard is, and Councilmember Robert White, and Councilmember Kenyon McDuffie, Councilmember LaRuby May, and Councilmember Mary Che, and Councilmember Brianne Nadeau, and I see Councilmember Silverman. So please join me in acknowledging our legislative branch. And Major General Schwartz is right in the front row, who commands our National Guard, and Lieutenant Commander Schaeffler from our Coast Guard, posted right here in DC's Ward 8. Thank you for your service to our city and to our nation. And we've also been joined by my commission that advises me on Veterans Affairs in the District of Columbia. Would members of the commission please stand up to be recognized? So I recognize our commission, who represents over 200,000 people from the District of Columbia since World War I that have served in our military. And right now in Washington, D.C., there are 30,000 veterans living, working, and leading. And even now, we have so many of our brave men and women from D.C. Deployed to locations across the globe, engaged in combat in defense of our nation. So as mayor, as an extreme point of pride that D.C. continues to be a part of our national defense. And members of our city, and Congresswoman Norton, who couldn't be here today, when we have a big deployment, she is always there to send off our troops and to welcome them when they come home. So going forward, we must continue to honor the courageous men and women who serve our country during war and peace. And it is important that we remind people, because sometimes we can go about our daily lives and we forget, in fact, the sacrifices that these men and women make and the sacrifices that their families make as well. So here in Washington, one way we have committed to honoring our veterans is by continuing our fight for the right to fully participate in our nation's democracy. And that's why so many of us, 80% in fact, voted on November the 8th to become the 51st state. And since we have the submarine and all, it's only proper. So I look forward to working with all of you. I congratulate the people of Connecticut who have the awesome responsibility of doing the work on these vessels. And I thank all of the people of the Navy who have been so focused in your tenure, Mr. Secretary, on building a strong national defense. And thank you again, and welcome to City Hall.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending today's event. This concludes our ceremony.